Welcome to the Fleet Geeks Podcast. We're here to help develop fleet and transport professionals. Do you want to progress and develop your skills and knowledge? We promise to bring lively conversation and debate around interesting issues and keep you bang up to date with changes in our awesome industry. The Fleet Geeks are a community of professionals, and if you enjoyed the podcast, why not join the discussion for free in the Fleet Geek community over on Facebook?
Did anybody hear? 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1.
It's like the drumsticks at the beginning.
We ought to do our own intro, shouldn't we? 3, 2, 1. Well, the red light is rolling. Welcome to the latest edition of Fleet Geeks Podcast, and there's all three of us in town today to visit you with some delightful talk about what are we going to be talking about, chaps? What's the subject of this podcast?
Facebook is always my content go-to, and this session we're going to have a quick talk on the professional HGV drivers group. The other day, 5th of June no less, group member asked, anyone know who you report a transport manager to if you feel they are breaking the law? Can a transport manager have his TMCPC revoked? ? And I thought that got us thinking. If you're a transport manager out there, should you make your drivers aware of a whistleblowing process if they're not happy? If you're a director of a transport company, should you have that? Because I'll be honest, a lot of the DVSA visits I've been subject to have normally been off the back of intel provided by a disgruntled driver or former transport manager. So I'll just sort of put it to you guys. What do you guys think about it?
Well, let's get the technical bit out of the way first. So, can a transport manager have his TMCPC revoked? Not really, because it's what they can do is lose their good repute. And good repute, as we know, is a requirement for a standard national or a standard international licence. So if you've lost your good repute, then you're not going to be able to act as a transport manager. Your licence to practice has basically been gazumped. It's not unknown for traffic commissioners to suggest, I think that's probably not suggest, is tell transport managers to retake the exam and present a new certificate. So kind of yes and no. Yeah, technically it's a loss of repute, but they could be banished from the industry forever, or asked to come back, and when they've done some what they call rehabilitation, which is a word that they actually use in those hearings. So that's that bit. The rest of it, I personally think it is a great idea to have some transparency. What do you reckon?
I definitely do. I also say that there's been more than one failing if it gets to that stage as well. And there's obviously not the relationship between the transport manager and his drivers, and so there's definitely more than one fail in there. And with the whistleblowing process and policy, I think any big business should have that, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a sensible decision, doesn't it?
Absolutely. So I think it's something that I've never even really had a conversation about as a safeguarding process for a business. But it's certainly something that I think we need to advise on moving forward, actually, and it's probably worth putting as part of our auditing and recommendation process. It's just to have a simple part of the employee handbook where there's a clear whistleblowing process, which means, if you're not happy with the transport manager and the way they're treating you, then you're able to report that to a senior member of the business who isn't the transport manager, and that gives you the opportunity to manage the situation in-house without having to escalate it, because the cost, the impact, what's the impact cost of DVSA investigation? Generally speaking, they'll request tachograph data, they're going to request vehicle maintenance files. It's going to take someone a couple of days to prepare. You're then going to have the key stakeholders in a meeting for a day, and potentially any further issues. So you're really dodging a bullet if you can manage manage that situation proactively.
I suppose there needs to be a difference between the grievance procedure and a whistleblowing. A grievance procedure with the transport manager would be always giving Fred some overtime, or he was nasty to me the other morning, or didn't say it. That's a kind of grievance.
Gives me all the shit jobs.
Yeah, gives me all the shit. As opposed to my transport manager asked me to do something which is clearly illegal or is potentially illegal.
I think they work together a little bit, though. If someone's got a grievance against the transport manager, they could then be looking for faults to report the transport manager.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
that's true. And I guess I'll offer a new service for Flagship then, because if you had a whistleblowing procedure, you may not have someone in house who they feel they could do that to.
Yeah.
And therefore, it might be worth engaging an external person to be on standby, to be that person to be able to handle it impartially. Because ultimately, it's important. If you have an escalation process, it needs to be without prejudice. It's a bit like an investigation we'll have to follow, which is something you'd carry out if there was a potential disciplinary matter. You need to ensure there's a fact find first. So you may need someone external to the business.
Absolutely, I think that's a really good point, Pete. I think that would be. I mean, if you in terms of this business, if you ask me now to go and shoplift, you're asking me to clearly do something illegal, and that's no different from a transport manager who asks a driver.
You mean you bought those cakes?
No, I thought you actually bought them. We've had some cakes in this afternoon. I bought them. Didn't luckily I didn't steal. Would have got a bag otherwise.
Yeah.
I mean, it is as clear cut as that, isn't it? It is. If that was the allegation that the transport manager had asked you to do something illegal, as opposed to just something you didn't want to do.
Hi, it's Pete from Flagship Partners. We're really proud to sponsor the Fleet Geeks podcast. Flagship Partners offer a range of consultancy and training services to ensure that our customers remain compliant and have the best possible knowledge to be able to fulfill their work. If you're interested in support with any of our safety, HR or compliance services, or you want to train to be a transport manager or need driver CPC training, give us a call today.
It's a tricky thing, isn't it? Because I think increasingly, and I know I've not mentioned this to you guys before, but increasingly, I feel like there's a need for a transport manager's code of conduct. I feel like there's a place for like a more senior quality level of transport manager where they've got a code of conduct, and they almost have like an independent sort of governing of making sure that they maintain those standards. But that I sort of digress. That's maybe something for another podcast. But I think I guess my advice is have a look at or have a speak to your drivers. What would they do if you're a director or you're a transport manager, if you did something to piss them off? Are they going to go straight to the... And it's tricky, isn't it? Because it's almost like giving them an idea to do something. But actually, I guess you're better off... dealing with it proactively, right?
Absolutely,
This is... You may choose to behave how you may choose to behave. If you want to choose to be a troublemaker, then go and cause trouble. However, if you've got a genuine concern and you want it to be resolved, if you feel like we're asking you to do something that you shouldn't, this is the process to follow, and it will be dealt with. It will be dealt with in an impartial, without prejudice manner, I suppose.
Yeah.
Do you think?
Yeah, I think so. What about Jay? What do you think of it? Just slightly changing it. What about from your background, in terms of maintenance and fitters? What about the grievance that the driver may have as to defect in a vehicle that the driver believes is defective, and the transport manager says, "No, take it, it'll be all right." How do you see that from your?
So if the transport manager, there's a great document out there, the categorisation of defects. It's a great document to look at.
Absolutely.
To see what the severity, what would it be? 'Cause it may just be an improvement notice, or things like the headlight or lights that you can still drive it during daylight. Had many of those conversations with drivers, etc. So that's one protocol you could look at. And if you, at the end of the day, if you don't feel a vehicle safe to take out,
it's your call, isn't it?
It has to be your call. It has to be your call,
and you have to have that confidence as a driver as well to say, this is my call, and I don't think it's safe. But then
I always think it needs an adult discussion with your transport manager as well. And a transport manager should be at that level of profession where he's going to make the right call. I know it doesn't happen every time.
No, pressures of work, pressures of customers. I always used to say the job would be a great one if it weren't for the customers, because they're the ones who put you under pressure at the end of the day.
But at the end of the day, road safety is key, isn't it? And doing things legally and right. But the categorisation of defects is a great thing to look at. And also just having that adult conversation.
I think you're right. I think too many times that transport managers are probably guilty of treating drivers a little bit contemptuously
Yeah,
and a
definitely,
little bit, you take it because I've told you it's all right. Whereas if you explain it to them, or even get a fitter to explain it to them, that's the way, isn't it? That's the way forward, isn't it?
Also, ask for advice. Tell the transport manager to ask for advice from the maintenance provider, perhaps.
Yeah,
it might be a case of they're in the area, they can pop by, or you can even run by and get them to have a look at something.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's ways around it. It doesn't always have to be that conflict, is there?
It is right, isn't it? It's like with vehicles. I think sometimes if somebody in a set of overalls tells you something, then you tend to believe them. But if a transport manager tells you it, they're not going to believe you. I've probably told this story before, but it goes back to years ago when I was working in a car dealership. Actually, I won't mention the franchise, and people know. But I ended up as a service receptionist, having been a time qualified, fitter. But and customers wouldn't believe me, but I dragged somebody out of the workshop wearing a pair of overalls. And they would tell them the same stories I told them. And, okay, I see now. Yeah, that's just because they're wearing a set of overalls. Yeah. So I think that's it's worth spending that extra few minutes with a driver, just to putting the mind at ease, isn't it, with that sort of thing? But
interestingly, as well, when I was a transport manager, I was told, "Be careful of him. He'll always get a defect Friday afternoon."
Yeah.
So that puts that seed in your head that is the driver telling the truth here.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to it, isn't there? It's not just a case of taking things at face value. You need to do due diligence, don't you, and make sure things are right.
I'm defecting that tyre. Why? Oh, it's black round, got a hole in the middle. Yeah. All right, anyway, we'll have that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, fantastic. Thank you everyone for listening. Think about it. Do you need a whistleblowing procedure? I think it might be worth investigating and discussing at a senior level, and possibly looking to put that in place. And if you're an ETM, maybe implementing an external person to have a whistleblowing procedure.
That's a great idea.
That's a good idea.
Support
you. Definitely.
Fantastic. Right, thank you for listening. Hope you all enjoy it. See you soon. Bye.
See you soon.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please share with your friends and colleagues too. Join us for free on Facebook with the Fleet Geeks community for transport and fleet managers. Fleet Geeks offers ongoing professional development, networking and mentoring too. So get in touch with me, Pete Rushmer, on any social media platform to find out more.